My name is Jessica Reynolds. I'm the director of the Office of Downtown Development with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. And thank you for joining us for our third Thursday Zoom session. We started this several months ago. Throughout COVID in 2020, we had been doing Zoom sessions on and off, and we decided we really want to kind of just make it a regular thing, that we would just monthly get together, get to see each other, especially since we're not really being able to like go out and meet with each other and interact, and have a way for us to just have a dialogue, have conversations. This is a little bit different than webinars. So like when we do webinars, it's like very educational focused. It's not as much of a dialogue or a conversation. The idea with the Zoom sessions with Third Thursdays is that we can have a conversation, we can have a dialogue. It creates an environment for that. We've got the chat feature. If you're one of those people, you're like, I really don't want to show my face, and I also don't want to talk. The chat feature exists for you. If you need to bring that up, you can scroll to the bottom of your screen and enable the chat, and it'll pop up a little white box, and you can type messages in there to everyone, or if you just want to ask our team specifically a question, you can send it directly to me, to Tara, to Elizabeth. We're all on here, and what I'll do throughout our session today is keep an eye on it. And so if I see questions come up, I'll make sure to call them out. If you want to ask a question verbally, hey, I encourage that. I think that's great. Again, it's all about the dialogue opportunities. You can just send me a little message or put one on there that you have a question, and I'll call on you. So when we were planning kind of what we were going to talk about in January, one of the things that had kind of come up was strategic planning, the whole process and work plan templates and all this kind of fun stuff. And we actually wanted to do it at the end of last year, but we realized like December is probably the worst month to try and do something like this, because everybody's got other things going on, and it's the holidays and we're all kind of mentally checked out. So we felt like, kicking off the year on a new foot, new year, hopefully, better stuff going on in the world. So let's start off the year this way. And again, we decided to go this route with our Third Thursday Zoom kind of chitty chats, because we wanted it to be more interactive than just us talking you through strategic planning or work plan development or using our templates and stuff like that. We really wanted it to just be a different take on it. And so one of the people who is going to be leading you through this today is Elizabeth Elliott. She's with our team. She's actually been with our team officially 2 years as of January 15th. So I missed her anniversary, and I feel really bad about it. But that's partially because I just feel like Elizabeth's been part of our team forever, and I can't imagine what we did before she was here. She is our little task master. She keeps us on track. She is very much the policies and procedures girl. She's the person who is going to reach out to you if you're delinquent on your monthly reports. And then if you're really delinquent for some reason, which I know nobody is ever, then she reaches out to me and says, hey, Jessica, I need you to call this person. And that's when you get in trouble. But Elizabeth has a preservation background from UGA. She also has a small rural local government background with the city of Washington prior to coming and working with us. So she's done a little bit of everything. And she's also the person who is always looking over your work plans, your annual assessment documents, all those kind of things. And so when we were talking about what we're going to do today, we couldn't think of a better person to really help kind of talk through this with you guys, because she is the one who sees the challenges and the mistakes people make the most, right? And she also gets the most questions about it. And so with that being said, Elizabeth, you want to say hi to us? Wouldn't it be funny if she wasn't on?
No.
She's here.
I tried to limit my coffee intake this morning so I wouldn't be quite as like on the Chihuahua meter, but we'll see what happens. No holds barred, like no promises, but I'm going to try.
Elizabeth likes to get really excited, and when she gets excited, she talks really fast. And so if at any point she's talking too fast, you can just raise your hand, give me a shout out, and we'll tell her to take a breath and slow down. And it's okay to do that. I know from personal experience, because I can do that too. I get like really excited. We just start talking really fast, and we can keep up with each other. And sometimes other people look at us like we're crazy. So yeah. If y'all need that, y'all just let us know. So Elizabeth, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know I kind of gave you a brief introduction, but talk to us, just, let everybody get to know who you are a little bit, and then we'll dive into the other stuff.
I'm Elizabeth Elliott. I am proudly a Texan. I don't think anybody's ever met a non-proud Texan, so I think that's sort of just like implicit in being. But originally from the great state of Texas, came to Georgia to get my master's degree in historic preservation at UGA about like 8.5 years ago. So crazy. I must have liked something here. I also met a boy. And so I stuck around, and all of y'all are pretty cool. So like, hey, I had a couple positions in historic preservation prior to getting involved in Main Street, which is also historic preservation. And I was the Main Street director in the city of Washington, Georgia, which I loved. I loved being at the local level, but just some extenuating circumstances. And then this position came open and I applied, and luckily I was welcomed with open arms and kind of became, as Jessica said, the spreadsheet queen, the taskmaster, the logistics person, the like mind melding, whatever, I don't know, compliance, like a little bit of everything. My actual title is downtown preservation planner. And so on that note, I've seen a lot of questions come in from the Facebook group in the past couple of days about preservation matters. Anytime you have a question of that, like by all means, pose it to the group because, the hive mind can be really wonderful. But at the same time, know that I'm also your resource. We have relationships with HPD. So if you're having some, difficulties getting in touch with somebody there, like we are happy or just need something clarified that they may have told you, like we are happy to be your resource. So just wanted to blanket statement that first off. And I'm the one that goes through all the drop boxes. Woo! And checks monthly reporting. So again, kind of the compliance person. So anytime you have that type of question, I'm your girl as well. And that's why I was chosen to give this presentation. Plus I'm a dork and I love to plan. So it's sort of, you'll see a slide I think's funny in my presentation, and probably most people won't get the reference, but it's fine. It made me happy, so it's all good.
Also, at some point, you are liable to see her cats in the background. So you can see like Mister over your right-hand shoulder. He was that's your left.
He's there. I apologize if he like licks himself in areas that I don't realize and it's on screen. It's happened. It's okay. I'll just kind of like do the pivot if I notice it. Anyways, without further ado, Jessica, is there anything else you wanted to add, or do you want me to get started?
We'll just let you get started. But again, the idea is that if you have questions or things that you want to ask during, as Elizabeth's going through, again, this is all about us being able to hit pause, answer questions, that kind of thing, have a dialogue and conversation. So don't feel, don't worry about interrupting us or, hitting pause for a second. Again, we just want to make sure all our bases are covered, and that's why we're doing it in this platform. So Cool. Kick us off.
Awesome. Wonderful. I'm going to share my screen because I said I wasn't going to do a PowerPoint, but I did a PowerPoint. So my little heart couldn't resist. So, all right. Demystifying the work plan, or how I learned to love the planning process, is how I like to look at it. Any Dr. Strangelove people out there? Heyo. That's one of my jokes. We'll see if that tracked. So in the planning process with Main Street, you've seen this graphic before, and just so you can kind of get that framework of where we're talking about in the planning process right now, is that phase 2. So you've already gone through the community visioning and market understanding aspect. Those elements are going to inform what you're putting into your plan. Also board meetings and stuff like that, and that'll be the second half of the presentation. So this is what we're talking about today: this phase 2, the transformation strategies, the planning, like all of that, like lovely stuff. So just that's kind of a visual about where we are in sort of the Main Street process. So for a lot of you, this is probably how you feel about planning. You like trying to look into the future, have no clue what's going on. Like you have about as much enthusiasm as Harry and Ron here. And then there's me, or what I thought was me for a very long time. I mean, she has a cat, it tracks, Hermione, bookworm, love me some research. But then I kind of had like a self-realization that y'all probably see me more like this, like Professor Trelawney, like, like what is she talking about? And so I'm embracing that. So I'm your Professor Trelawney today, teaching you how to look into the future and plan for it. I also still maintain a little bit of Hermione, but today I'm definitely stepping into the shoes of Professor Trelawney. So in 2020, we introduced a new work plan template because I know when I was at the local level, the previous template was not the easiest to work with. And so we wanted to make sure that the planning process wasn't a burden for y'all. We really wanted to make it useful to where it's like, we're making you do this. So we want it to be a useful document and also a document that's fairly simple. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a professional planner to figure it out. So I'm just going to literally just go through the template section by section, and then I'm going to show you an example from a community that did it really, really well recently that I just kind of, I could fill out like a pseudo example, but they just did such a great job and had a couple points that I'm going to mention, but it just was sort of that real world practice to better understand like how to utilize this template. So number one, transformation strategy. We love them. We hate them. We'll talk about them a little bit later, so don't worry about it. And if it's still hazy for you, remember we have our community transformation strategy workbook, which is an awesome, awesome resource. Again, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, so we're not going to hang out here. But for community transformation strategies, we say you should have, 2 to 3 in each community, like 6 too many, 10 too many. They're really supposed to be those high level ideas that you can like really bunch a lot of initiatives under. So you can think of them a lot of different ways. You could think of them as like little mini vision statements, like the snippets of your elevator pitch for your program. There's a lot of ways you can look at it, but the heart of it is like, these are the like major themes your community, your board, yourself have identified that you really want to work towards to create community change. So that's transformation strategies. So in the template that is on the website now, we put a new and improved template on the website, and the template I'm going to be working through here, if you get the Word document, it is completely built out. And so what I mean by that, it is like the biggest document you could possibly have within the parameters we're giving you. So there's 3 transformation strategies and 4 goals for each strategy listed under them. If you only have 2 transformation strategies, delete all the stuff for the third one. If you only have, 2 goals for 1 transformation strategy, you can delete those extra sheets. It's really supposed to be a template that you make your own. So that's sort of like a blanket statement. And if you're confused by that, reach out to me and I can help you. But it's a Word document. It should be pretty simple. Next. So then we have our why. We like this because sometimes it's like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. And it's like, well, why? We make you think about that. So you have your answer ready. Plus, it's important for yourself and your board to understand the why, because if it's one of those things like, well, we're working on it, but we really don't care about it. Well, it's like, okay, well, then is it something you should be working on? So it really makes you think out that reasoning. It doesn't have to be like this grandiose statement. It can be something fairly simplistic, but just to understand why this is currently important to your program.
And I always like to refer to that too as kind of like your mission or vision statement for your strategy, because when you look at the strategies that we have, like the catalyst strategies, they can be very short and concise. And so the idea is that you are using this why section to interpret the strategy in a way that makes sense for you and your program. Right? So this is what this means to us. This is why we are doing it. And this is how we will focus our efforts and energies. Again, really just kind of clarifying your intentions.
Thank you, Jessica. And then we have our goals. And so this area can be a little bit confusing for some people. And so transformation strategy, that's really like upper level view. Your goals are those like the things that you actually want to accomplish in the year. So it could be everything from establishing a facade grant program to starting the first phase of a major construction, first phase of a major development project that you know it's going to be a 5-year phase. It can be a little bit of everything. It can be small, it can be large. And that's sort of the purpose of that. And again, when I show you the example, it's going to be a little bit more clear, but those are really like, okay, well, these are the things we want to do. There's a reason there's only 4 for each transformation strategy, because we see a lot of times people create work plans and they're lovely and they're so enthusiastic and hopeful, but they are not realistic. There's no prioritization. There's a list of 30 things that are going to happen that are new things for that year. And at the end of the year, 29 of those things are still on the list because they did not prioritize what they wanted to accomplish. So having these 4 goals is forcing programs to really say, okay, these are the 4 things under this transformation strategy that we want to accomplish this year. You can have a list of like 12 that you're like, I really want to do these, but these are your 4 you're prioritizing. If you finish one of these, it can go off, roll on a new one. That's fine. But this is really to help you focus your energies of like, if nothing else happens this year, if 2020 happens again, please no. These are the 4 things that are realistic goals that hopefully we're going to be able to accomplish under this transformation strategy. And so there's a reason there's only 4. And so that's another major thing. Also, in this section, repeat responsibilities. The festival that has happened in your town for the last 30 years is not a work plan item, it's a repeat responsibility. Work plan, the goals are things that are new initiatives, programs, anything like that you are trying to achieve in that particular year. Repeating, and so we created this section just so that there is a place for those other things to live. Because I know when I was local, I kind of felt frustrated. It's like, okay, well, here's the work plan items. We do so much more than this and you're not seeing it. This is your place to kind of keep track of those items as well. So it could be, the festival, it could be an annual fundraising initiative. It could be, we do social media posts twice a day on these things. It's like we send out a weekly email. Those types of things that are like things that you have to do as a program. This is where you can track that. Those items that you're already doing don't go under the goals. Next page. So for every goal, we have a tasks page. And this is where you really get into the nitty-gritty about how you're going to accomplish that goal. So we have you repeat your transformation strategy, so just so you know where this particular goal fits in the grand scheme of things. And then you list out that goal from the previous page, bring it down, and that's sort of just like repeat information. You define your success. So again, like, when have you accomplished this goal? Like sometimes it's like we have a goal, but if we don't set those boundaries, and some are easy. It's like if you're like, we need to rehab that building. Well, when the rehab's done, great, it's accomplished. But sometimes it's sort of those like more amorphous, well, when will we say that this is like, a completed or we're satisfied with the progress we've made on this particular initiative? So that's where you kind of that's what you do there, is you define your success. Partners, we don't live on an island. We don't live on a silo. And a lot of times, like, you can't accomplish anything unless you're bringing partners into the equation, or at least having a conversation and notifying them about what you want, what your goals and dreams are for the next year or 2. So this is where you can kind of, put those partners that you're intending to work with. And again, when we look at the example, you'll see you'll see an example of that. Next tasks. This is the fun part. This is where you really have to think through things. So again, in a lot of work plans that you see, you have those goals listed out, and it's sort of like having that big list of goals that you don't prioritize. If you have a list of goals, but you don't, and you're really wanting your board to contribute to accomplishing those, if you don't go through the effort of listing out like the process that you're envisioning that to make this a successful and achievable goal, it's sort of like you get into that framework of somebody says, okay, well, I guess I'll work on this. It's like, great, we'll do this. Like, okay. They do it. Next time you hear from them might be from the net in like a month. They're like, well, I did it. And it's like, okay. And he's like, but I didn't know what to do next. So cool. So this task helps like really let you think through that process. Okay, well, we say we want to do this, but what does that look like? And so actually going through that pre-planning phase of, say we want to put window clings on all the abandoned buildings downtown, or like vacant buildings downtown, till it could be one of those classic of imagine the possibilities, or full of possibilities, or it could be, you know, a little downtown narrative or something like that. Well, if you just say that as a goal, that's very basic. But if you actually go through the effort of like, okay, well, number one, I guess we should like identify all the abandoned buildings downtown. Number two, contact the property owners and see which ones are open to the idea of us putting window clings on their abandoned buildings. Number two, okay, well, we got that. So then we need to go measure them and decide what artwork we want on them. Okay, now we need to find a company to create those for us. Reach out to the city and see if they would be willing to help install. Like all of those elements are things that like you work through, and that's what you put on this list. And also a responsible member, responsible staff, due date, progress, budget. So that whole SMART goals idea.
Yeah. And I think, you know, another good way of looking at it is a goal is going to have multiple tasks, but a task is a one-off. It's something that you can one and done. You know, I've worked on this specific item and I've been able to accomplish it. Whereas a goal is going to have multiple steps or tasks that have to happen in order to accomplish it. And again, you know, we've seen some really great master plans from around the state, whether it's by, you know, the RSVP program or independent contractors or stuff like that. And in these master plans can be some great things that you want to accomplish. But again, you know, versus saying like, oh, this is our work plan, we encourage you to go in there and pick specific things that you want to work on, identify those as your goals, and then identify the task or steps. And again, you know, you could have 2, you know, pages of tasks for one goal. That's okay, you know, or, you know, really dive down into that goal and say, okay, well, this is really the first thing we would need to do. Okay, how do we accomplish these things? And then list those tasks. And remember the idea is to get really specific so that you're able to feel that success by checking off things, by saying, yes, we've done this, and being able to measure your success by being able to accomplish these tasks.
Yeah, you can cross out tasks and say to-do list, like if that's an easier way to like come to terms with what we're looking for there. And so that's kind of what Jessica's describing, those things that you can kind of get that satisfaction of like, yes, I've done it, and like cross it out. And that just like internal tingle when you've like, oh, I've accomplished something. So that's what this list really is looking for.
Yeah. And again, it's also a great kind of succession planning process too. If you have new board members coming in, if there's any changeover in staff, if you have new support staff coming in, being able to say, look what we're working on, look what we've been able to accomplish so far, look what we still have to do as a roadmap to help you guys be a successful team together.
And it's also one of those meeting tools too, because when I was in Washington, we would go through the agenda, sort of like our work plan, sort of, it's like, this is what we're doing for our meeting. With this, it could be, you know, this has a responsible board member to it. So every board member kind of has their own sheet of marching skills, which is what this goal is. And so it's not just, you know, like, where are we on this specifically? It's like that board member could have this sheet that's like kind of their pet project, or a couple of sheets if they're working on like collaborating on some, and that they really can say it's like, okay, we're on this step to accomplish this goal, which is really cool. And it gives you that, it empowers the board members as well. So this is fun. And yes, so transformation strategy. So this, I love the why. It kind of shows you what that why box is for. And honestly, I can't see what it says at the top because my little Zoom bar is covering. But the transformation strategy, I believe it's catalytic projects.
Yeah, it says focus upon catalytic programs and projects.
And so the why is because failure to do so makes for an erratic, non-sequential work program. Human and financial resources are limited. We must prioritize work items to become influencers and anchors, are most impactful to the tax base, and to provide high public visibility for our program. So that kind of explains the why. And I have another example down the road. But I like this one specifically because it also shows you these are all long-term projects. They're not just like like put flower pots on the square. These are big projects, but you can see how they like basically phase them into different years. And so that's where it's like, if you have one of those big, I know Tara did a lot of really wonderful projects when she was in Dublin, and her sort of last baby that she gave birth to while she was the program director there was this wonderful redevelopment of a parking lot and sort of vacant space in between two buildings. And that was a 2-3 year project, Tara?
6 years
6
from
years.
planning to completion, 6 years.
Yeah. So if that's the case, it's like that would be like, okay, well, this year we're focusing on phase 1. Next year it's phase 2. The year after that, phase 3. So you can kind of plan out that progress. And I'm sure it took longer than you thought it was going to, but it's just sort of showing that it's not just for like little projects. This can be used for larger projects as well. It's just the phased approach. So you realize what your timeline is for the next couple of years. And then you see the annual responsibilities. So they've included that too. And this is going into the details. So define sets, like here are all their steps that they're looking at. Here are the board members and even partners, which I really like. Staff responsible, due date, complete, budget, all of that type of stuff. So it shows you those like minutia of like, okay, these are all the steps we need to go to, and you're thinking through that process. And so, you know, like when you cross one off, you're like, I don't even know what to do next. It's like, no, I do, or at least I have an idea because it's on my work plan. This is another one. This is a common one we see, kind of preserve downtown, preserve the environment, all of that stuff. Again, the why. While historic racism might not be the oldest, purest, or best examples of our architecture, they are our stage backdrop, visual identity, and our model for downtown center. This is our highest strategy for preservation and retention. Another thing I really love about this one is they actually incorporated references to their comprehensive plan. So that's the parentheses you see for 1B. So they're pulling these out from their comprehensive plan and like referencing back, which is really wonderful. And that's another thing you could do for some of those bigger strategic plans is referencing those in this work plan, but pulling out and prioritizing the specific examples you want to utilize or focus on this year. And again, repeat annual responsibilities, administer board meetings, staff design review process. These are all the things that you're doing, but they don't really go in that goals section because they're not a new initiative. And again, digging deeper into one of those goals, develop a fire alarm program success, 50% of merchants, partners, historic preservation, city fire department, went through the tasks of these are the things that the steps that need to be happening to accomplish this, or this is what we think, you know, our guided steps are going to be for the next year. Timeline, failing phase, budget. So this is a really great real world example of like how this functions in the wild. Like when you release it to you, like this is how it lives in your community. But I know you're, yeah.
Hey, can I stop you right there and ask a question?
Yeah.
So I may be the only person out there like this. So I'll throw that out there. What is the best advice you would have for a downtown manager when, you know, for some, I would guess that they're like me, looking at this is sometimes like putting a square peg in a round hole because you don't know what you need to do until you're kind of in there doing it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I can't say for sure when we had 2 or 3 or 6 year projects, what, you know, sometimes I didn't know what I needed to do until after I'd already done it.
Yeah.
And so what would be your best advice on how someone can manage keeping this document alive and up to date when you are sort of flying by the seat of your pants and you don't really know what their tasks are going to be because you just don't know. There's so many factors.
Yeah, great question. So number one, this is not a static document. So when you said alive, that's perfect. This document can evolve, it can change. If you're in a project and you're like, oh, I had no idea. That can evolve. So that can be everything from your goals. It can be the task list, all of that type of stuff. And so that's like when I said earlier, you prioritize your goals, but if you accomplish them earlier than you expected, like throw some more in there. Awesome. And then it's just this evolving document to help you plan what's going forward. As far as the tasks, none of us, like I know I'm Professor Trelawney, but even I can't see the future. And so there's sometimes that like, you know, you think that these are the steps, but really the exercise is to go through the process so it's not as overwhelming when you're looking at just that top line item. So it's sort of like your best, I wouldn't want to say guess, but just like your best vision of like how this is going to fall together and put it in there, or these are the steps that I'm aware of now. And I'm sure that there's going to be some more that are like sort of those intermingling things. You do not have to like every time you're like, oh, I had another step and I didn't realize I need to put it in there, but I've already accomplished it. You don't have to do that. This is really just that exercise of like, these are how we're going to accomplish it versus just having that like static one statement of like, we're going to put trees downtown.
Gotcha. How often would you check into this document how often did you check into your work plan? Monthly with your board or?
Yeah, because I also just found it a really easy way to help guide board meetings so that you don't go off into like there be dragons area. Like all of a sudden we're talking about a lake 3 miles from the city and we're the downtown development authority. Like, so a lot of times it like kind of helps you. Also, I have to credit Lily from Cartersville with There Be Dragons. That was
Be Dragons, yes.
in her annual assessment, and we all died. And now it is my favorite phase. So feel free to R&D that because it's fabulous. But yeah, so it's just one of those things.
Okay.
And I would say too, when you're looking at your tasks, again, Tara was mentioning, sometimes you don't even realize you need to do something until you're going through it. And that's where a lot of times things will kind of change and evolve, especially in that task area. You may get started down one road and realize this is not going to work, right? Or we have to change and pivot and stuff like that. And that's okay. And again, that's why I think this is a living, breathing document that should constantly evolve and change. It's not something that you just do one time and then just hope for the best. And I think too that, there's if you haven't looked at the community transformation strategies book, there's a lot of good recommendations in there for how to kind of like focus your efforts and energies. And one of them is the 80-20 rule, knowing that 20% of the tasks are going to get us 80% of, towards accomplishing this goal. So with anything that we're trying to do, there's always going to be a couple of things that are going to get us further along in the process than others. And sometimes we save those till the very end. But what I would charge you with doing is work on those hardest things that are going to get you the most impact and the most results first, right? Because then if you start going down that road and it's not working, sooner rather than later. You're not doing all the little things just to hit a big roadblock at the end. And so I think that's, that's really kind of important to keep in mind, is prioritizing those tasks as well to make sure that you're working on things efficiently.
Awesome.
And Tara and Jess, can you kind of monitor the chat? I've seen
I just saw that K1 from Americas says she's planning on using this to guide their board for the retreat this year. Is that wise? Absolutely. And I would say
I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in like
perfect. I was just going to say, when you're doing any kind of like board facilitation retreat or something, even when we work on them with boards, we use this kind of as a way to focus their efforts and energies to say, all right, if this is our transformation strategy, let's pick some like top goals. Okay, that's great. Now we need to work on the, defining those tasks. Like what is it going to take to do this and accomplish this?
I answered Elena's. I messaged her. For those, and this is a question, I know the original template we had on the website was a PDF, and then a lot of people didn't have, PDF editable software. And so then this template is on the website now, and it's a Word doc, so it should be easier for most people to utilize. It's a multi-page document. It's just not the 2-page. Like I said, it's fully built out. And we can, so it's on the website under the resource tab and the resource library, if you look for it there. But then you're always welcome to reach out to us and say like, hey, do you have this too?
Yeah. And we left the PDF one up there. It is an editable version, but yeah, we wanted to make sure that you guys had access and as much customization as you need to for that document.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then the next slide.
Yeah, it looks like we have a couple other folks too. Renee, that said that this has been great in helping them stay, or that Joel and Alice with their stuff before, who utilized this approach, have helped, has been good at helping people stay focused. We appreciate Joel and Alice for that. Again, what any good facilitator is going to do is come in and help you use this kind of foundation to focus your efforts and energies. So, all right, with that being said, I'll let you.
Yes. And so this is sort of a little bit of behind the scenes. And so one of our programs reached out to me and said like, hey, can you take a look at our work plan? I just, want to see your thoughts and if there's ways we can improve it. I was like, great. Spoiler alert, it was the work plan I just showed you. It's fabulous. The only thing was they had 6 transformation strategies. And I'm like, for your effort, like we need to help condense those into some sort of like kind of that 3 or the 2, just because to fill out that work plan and those cover sheets for 6 transformation strategies is a lot of work. Plus and even when I kind of mentioned that. I was muted.
I don't know. We lost you for a second, but now you're back.
Oh, okay. But anyways, and so I kind of just did this, and this is how my brain works. Like I just copied and pasted all of her transformation strategies that she had, all the goals underneath them into a Word document so I could just look at them. And I'm like, okay, well, how can these fit together and how can we kind of condense these into the 3? And so then I highlighted them in colors that I thought they would group together well. Then I created 3 new transformation strategies for her, basically using her same verbiage or combining some that she already had. And so this kind of shows you, like, I know that sometimes it can be, you can seem like you're going up a mountain when you're trying to get from the data that like maybe your board decided on, you want to work on these things, to actually fitting it into the template or condensing it down to like 3 transformation strategies. This kind of shows you sort of like, okay, just put it in an outline, like put it in an outline, look at it. Where are things similar? Where do things tuck under? Or what are the kind of the themes that you're seeing? And this is something like, these are some of the techniques you can use in the planning session too, but in that kind of post stage when you're actually filling out the document, like there might be like, if you need to do this, do this. Like I do this, obviously I did this. And then so the next one was, so this kind of shows you how now they're like in their new little, like happy little, they're happy little houses. And it's just simplified. It's all the same amount of stuff. It's just condensed. It's a lot clearer. And honestly, I know that the work plan template can be a lot sometimes. And so, you know, it might not be the worst idea to like, this could be your at the glance. Like here's your at the glance plan of work. And then the work plan is like the task items and how we're going to get it done. Because I know sometimes looking at that entire document can be overwhelming. And so this is just kind of be like, okay, what are those like, you know, specific things we're focusing on? And then you go to, and then, or even having it as a reference to know where to find it in the larger document. That's not a bad idea either. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to.
And I will say that obviously we as in our team, our staff, have been doing this a lot longer than some folks. And we are really in the nitty gritty of it because we live and breathe it every day. We've seen multiple, you know, examples of it. We literally wrote the book on it. If you need help, we do not expect you to be subject matter experts in this by any means. Like that's what we're here for. If you need help, if you feel like you got a good start, but you need another set of eyes on it, if you need help with this kind of stuff, like I feel like we got a lot, we need to narrow it down. Can you help us focus our efforts and energies? Please reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We're not going to do it all for you as in like you have to do the work, you know, but we can really help you make sure that you're focusing your strategies, that you have the right language in there, that you're thinking through it, you know, and we're here to be, you know, assets and help you through that process. So if you need help, please, again, don't feel like you have to do this all on your own. That's what we're here for. That's, you know, that's why we exist, to help y'all do this, accomplish this, feel successful, and feel like we're setting you on a good path towards accomplishing the things you want to work towards.
And even to say, I mean, so this kind of shows you behind the scenes what I've done for some communities, but if you're looking at that task list and it's a project that like you're really excited about, but it overwhelms you and you're like, I don't even know like what the first, like ask it on like, hey, I'm developing my task list for this project. Do you have any of y'all had any experience with it? Can you kind of give me some insight of what I'm looking at? Or again, reaching out to our office and asking the same thing. You're going to have to do the most of the heavy lifting, but if you just need an idea of where you're supposed to start or a rough roadmap, like that's a great, you know, catalyst for a conversation of like, we want to accomplish this. What are some of the steps that you found are the most important that we should really focus on in our work plan?
And I would say too, that's a great way to, if you are in the GDA, Georgia Downtown Association's Mentor Mentee program, it's another great resource. Reaching out to your mentor to say, hey, I've got this project, I'm thinking through it. I just need another thought partner. in the process. Or if you've got another manager within your region or your area, or even in the state, that's a friend that you've made and you've got a buddy and you've bonded. I always think of like Trudy up in Clarksville and Jesse and Cornelia. And they're so great about reaching out to each other and communicating. But it's, it's also, an opportunity to say, hey, we're working on this. Have I thought of everything? Am I missing something? What else am I not considering? And just kind of getting that outside perspective. Sometimes that can be so, so valuable into just helping you kind of move forward and thinking about it from a different perspective.
I mean, we even go so far as to share different equipment. So if she's doing an outdoor movie, she'll borrow our screen, and we'll borrow her fire pit for marshmallow. Like, yeah.
That's awesome.
And I think that's, that Jesse Trudy relationship is like, that's what makes us different than other economic developers, right? I mean, we're economic developers, but our focus is just very contained, right, to that kind of historic downtown core area. But we're all about supporting each other and helping lift each other up, because we know that what happens up the street in Clarksville is also good for us in Cornelia, because people live regionally. People don't just live and breathe in one community. Like what happens, can help support and affect us all in a positive way. And so, again, that's what sets us apart. And that's what makes us so different than other, really competitive economic developers. And that's kind of what I love about us and what we do and who we are, because we are here to support each other and help each other.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now for the part 2 of the presentation. I'm like, need to pull up my like little extra thing over here to make sure I remember what I'm talking about. Okay, cool. So we kind of asked for pre-questions. We didn't really get that many, but one question we did ask is like, I really am excited to learn about the work plan, but we're in a virtual world right now. So how can we really do our board planning session and have it be effective virtually? And so as you see, the same rules apply for the most part. There are some tips and tricks that I'm going to share with you, and some really exciting tools I've found that I think could make the process easier, and in some ways like better than in person, but that's never true. So anyways, but really by and large, the same rules apply. A successful planning session needs to be welcoming. People need to feel comfortable. Encourage people to like have a coffee, or like have snacks available depending on how long it's going to be, take restroom breaks if needed. Just because you're sitting at a computer, like, think about like, well, what's the environment you create when you're doing it in person? Try to like, encourage people to create that in their homes. It needs to be welcoming. They need to feel comfortable. Organized. There's a whole nother separate slide on that, so we won't go too into it, but organization is key to, respect people's time and to actually, it to be a productive meeting. And then also the most important probably is just a constructive forum for feedback, safe space. We're going to go into some facilitation techniques and sort of like letting everybody say their piece, philosophies in later slides, but these are sort of like the overview of like, these are really the important factors. So organization, a new sort of element in the virtual space that I have found is homework can be a very useful and in a lot of ways necessary element for virtual planning sessions, just because when you're staring at a screen, you do not have the same attention span if you're in a room of people. So kind of, and I'm not talking like grand essays or something, like, you're bored. Ask of them what you think that they would be completing. And we always have those sort of like, just like in high school, the students that like, no matter what, they're not going to do it, but then they're just not going to be prepared and they're not going to have as much, like, we'll just stop there. Anyways, homework. And so pre-prepared participants, so they really know the line of questioning or what the facilitation technique is going to be, the questions that are going to be asked, so they can be thinking about them, even writing down some notes for it. One of the things I'm going to be talking about is utilizing our community transformation strategy workbook as really your main guide for your as an idea to guide your planning session. And so in that case, it would be having them read it, or at least go through it and read the transformation strategies themselves, and pick 5 that they really think that would be good for your program to focus on in the next 3 or 4 years.
And
So
that's
certain things
also
like,
too where managers can do a little pre-work there. And if you feel like there's certain ones that you want them to pay more attention to, or you think would be a better fit, you can call that out and say, hey, I need you to look these over before, because these are some of the ones we're going to be discussing.
Yep. So homework. So kind of think about that when you're doing a planning session is, again, like you want to make sure they're prepared because nobody wants to sit on Zoom for 5 hours or 4 hours, but sometimes it's a reality. But the more like they're able to prepare and be ready for the conversation, the quicker you can do that virtual element. Strong agenda, stay on track. Agendas are important in virtual meetings just as they're important in physical meetings. You need to have those, like, these are what we're doing, this is what we're working through, and we need to be aware of time. Just because it's virtual, that doesn't go out the window. So make sure you prepare an agenda. And think it through. Again, know your questions. I know for a lot of planning sessions, it can be tricky because you go into the room and it's like, well, tell me your thoughts. And it's like, well, that's not constructive. You need to have some guiding questions, like some of the things that, you've been to all the board meetings, like kind of those things that are like lingering, or the standard ones, like the SWOT analysis and stuff like that can be some of your questions, and a couple of dig deeper questions, but know what you're really wanting to glean from that, and and that will help you sort of define some of those facilitation techniques down the road. Know your facilitation techniques. They're very important. That's how you manage your attendees, and you make sure one person doesn't get the floor the entire time, and that everybody has a chance to kind of put their 2 cents in. Like during the meeting, share initial insights like, oh, this is interesting. I'm kind of seeing a trend here. Because not everybody's brain works the same, or like encourage your board members too, to like kind of notice things that are happening, because that can help you sort of narrow down things in the future. What next? What's like, make sure they know what's next. Completing the work plan, woo! And then call to action, assign board roles. It could be just like you have rough ideas of where stuff is going to fit, but it's like, okay, based on this, who's interested? And just because they have an expertise does not mean they're going to be interested or want to work on particular items. So make sure that you also take into consideration people's interests, because they might be serving on the board. They're a lawyer and they have a desire to square dance, or I don't know, they really want to plan a square dancing party. So great. Like if they're going to lean hard into that and that's a community goal, let them do it, because they're going to be a lot more motivated than somebody that just does not care. So also think about that. Facilitation techniques. It's how you herd the cats. So it introduces structure, which helps reduce conflict. Like I said, it gives that chance of, most of the facilitation techniques is sort of like quiet contemplation, write it down and then share with the group. So every voice is heard. You don't have like kind of the grandstanders. More constructive conversation, because it's guided. It's not just sort of a free for all where you don't know what to do with the information afterward. Organizes, prioritizes, and analyzes the information as well. Facilitation tools.
I was gonna say, with the techniques, if this is your first time facilitating any kind of board retreat, whether it's virtually or in person, I always like to start with something that's gonna like let you get to know each other a little bit first, and some kind of game,
like an icebreaker.
Yes, is that what you're gonna talk about? But then the other thing I was gonna say is, what was I gonna say? I don't know. Never mind. Carry on.
Sorry. I interrupted your
I know you broke my concentration and then I got lost. So
sorry. Well, if it comes back, just let me know.
Okay.
And so in any
I remember. Sorry. With one of the other things that we've done is again, when Elizabeth's talking about icebreakers, getting to know each other, and then one of the other things is usually we talk about like strengths and weaknesses, right? And you can call them whatever you want, but it's a nice way to just get people talking about the things that they love in your downtown district, and then things that are a challenge. And then usually those things that are challenges start kind of forming the basis for the transformation strategies that we're going to work on. So if you don't know where to start at all, that's a great place to start. Just asking each person to talk about those things and kind of going around the room. Okay, I'm done.
So facilitation tools, and really facilitation tools and just facilitation techniques in general help you avoid the beware of items. So the halo effect. And so we've all been in that situation where, say, your mayor decides to come in and attend your meeting. You're like, oh, that's great. We really love him to be part of this. But then there's a halo effect. So he's like, well, I'm the mayor. And he says something, he's like, well, I think this is a great idea. And everybody internally could be like, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. But they're also thinking like, oh, but he's the mayor, so I guess I have to say yes, so that's the halo effect. It's like when somebody comes in the room that has more power than the other people, or perceived power, and sort of everybody in the room becomes yes men or yes women to their ideas, just because they have this perceived like level of authority towards like, well, we don't feel like we can say no to something from them. And so these facilitation techniques and the ground rules techniques help sort of like mitigate that effect. Bandwagon effect is very similar. Like maybe one person shares their idea and they're the first person that shares their idea. The next person might not have a lot of enthusiasm about the planning meeting. And so like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, whatever. Third person down the line, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to disagree. I feel like we're on a roll, so I'll agree too. And so by the time we get to the end of the line, you have one dissenter and they're like, well, I don't want to say no because apparently everybody wants to do this, so I'm just going to be quiet. But if they raised a concern, you don't know, because it could be like, oh, actually, I have that concern too. It might not, and it just kills the conversation, the bandwagon effect. So again, these facilitation tools help sort of combat that. And that's something to kind of be aware of when you are in a group. That sometimes people don't like the devil's advocate. I play the role of the devil's advocate a lot, and it's okay. Ask my team. I'm like, this isn't a hill I want to die on, but I got to say my piece. And so that's a very common phrase when we're going through planning sessions with our team. And it also helps with grandstanders, which are the people that just like they want to talk and they talk and they talk. And next thing you know, 30 minutes are over. Your entire planning chunk of time is gone and one person spoke. So the way to kind of combat some of these, again, strong facilitation technique, which we'll talk about. Icebreaker, so making everybody feel comfortable, because maybe if people don't feel comfortable, they're just not willing to share as much. So it could be 2 truths and a lie. It could be the drawing the pig exercise. It could be the picture a dog exercise. Jessica used to do it as a stove. I like dogs. So it's the one where it's like, everybody close your eyes and picture a dog. Like, okay, we're doing that. Okay, so you tell me about your dog. You tell me about your dog. They're all different. It's like, hey, well, that's proving the point. The reason we're here is because, I want to make sure when I say close your eyes and you're picturing a dog, we're all picturing Jack Russell Terriers with a little patch over their eye. So it sort of like helps you sort of get people in the mood for what you're trying to accomplish, and also sort of like shake it out, Parking lot, I feel like most of us have heard about this one. It's where you get kind of maybe that grandstander that has like one thing that he really wants to talk about, but it's taking up time. And it's just sort of like, okay, well, we understand that that's really important to you. We're going to put that in the parking lot and we'll come back to it when we have time. But right now we just really want to stay on task. We're acknowledging that this is important to you. We're not putting, it's not called the graveyard or anything like that, but it's really just to like acknowledge that this is a concern of theirs, but also not let that concern hijack the entire meeting. And that's what the parking lot is for. Spirit stick, feel like we've all done this before. The person that is talking has an object and they're the only ones allowed to talk. So people are forced to listen instead of sort of like trying to combat what they're saying. They have to listen and digest what their colleague is saying. So like really having that availability, and honestly having a time limit on that, not a bad idea, because then you don't want the grandstander to get it and have it for 30 minutes. It's sort of like having that clicking along period. And then again, spotlight, it's kind of the same idea with the spirit stick, except it's a more formalized, where everybody gets a minute to speak and kind of like answer this question and kind of go around the room. So again, everybody has the same amount of time to contribute and one person doesn't hijack the entire conversation.
Yeah, and I would say
and all this can be virtually.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and all this is really important, and especially with the spotlight, making sure that if you have people who are more quiet that haven't said anything and they haven't talked in 30 minutes or something, that you specifically say, hey, Karen, what do you think? And hey, Tara, what are you thinking about this? And just really kind of, again, not trying to put them on the spot, but just making sure that we notice that they've been quiet and we want to make sure that they've been heard. And I will say, after being on lots of boards over the years and also facilitating lots of meetings over the years, I will say that a little bit of that preliminary work that you can do ahead of time with new board members to get them caught up so they feel like they understand what's going on with the program and what you've been working on will go a long way, because I see it a lot. New board members come on and it's not that they agree or disagree. They just are so new that they don't want to rock the boat, right? They don't want to be the one person who's like going against everything that everybody's been working on. So sometimes being able to sit down with them one-on-one and have that conversation ahead of time. Hey, this is what we've been working on. These are the things that we've been doing and successful with. These are our challenges. Can really go a long way to helping them be more vocal and participatory in your facilitation retreat. Again, it's just helping them feel empowered to be a part of the conversation rather than just kind of a wallflower.
So on to facilitation techniques. Yay. I'll try to go through this quickly because I know that we're being long-winded. Or I am. So post-it note method is probably the most common method most people have encountered when they're doing a community planning session or a board retreat. It's really simple, and it's one of those like really structured ways of kind of do some of those like the spirit stick or the spotlight sort of version, but they have to write it down so they can't change their answer. So that way you can also kind of combat that halo effect and the bandwagoning effect, because they've already written down their answers. And so they really get to have that purity of thought and not be influenced with others in the room, like, cause they're just focusing on what they're doing. So this is a great method. And so essentially pass out post-it notes, pose a question, they write down their answer. You can post it on a wall or virtually, which I'm about to show you, which is really exciting. And then you kind of are noticing themes based on that question and grouping them. And that kind of gives you some insight of maybe things you're wanting to work on as a group in the future and all that type of stuff. And then you can introduce dot voting to it as well, which is essentially like a prioritization technique. So you might have 10 things and you need to narrow it down to 4. And so it's like you give each person a certain number of dots, they vote for their top ones in each section, or which ones they really want to focus on. And those are kind of the prioritized. These are what we're working on as a board. So that gives you that element. I want to show you this really cool software that I'm really excited to start using. It's called Miro.com, and it is basically a virtual Post-it chart. So you share this with your board. So you can kind of see some different ones that they have. Oh, it's not going to let me do things because but you can see this. And so they all can write down their Post-it notes. You can group them, you can move them, do the same thing that you would do on an actual wall in a facilitation meeting. They have an actual template. Huh?
Are you seeing it, Miro?
Can you see it?
No,
I don't see it.
Let's see. Oh, I know why. Can you see it now?
Yes, now I can see it. Yep. Okay, so it's called Miro, M-I-R-O.
Miro. And so it's like my little dorky heart is all aflutter, and I cannot wait to start utilizing this more. I am so excited. If you can't tell, I need to calm down. But again, so you have your Post-it notes, you can make them any colors that you want, you can add more. Basically, you share the link to this board with your board members and they all can access it. You can put your pre-work on here. So again, you can move these around, group them, people can write stuff. They even have kind of templates already set up for work planning sessions. And so they literally gives you sort of the steps and a rough agenda, what we're going to be doing, what do we want, how do we need to prove, next steps. It's awesome. And so I know that, like I said, this was one of the questions of how do we do this virtually? You just kind of have to get creative with tools and find them. This is one I found because we were, looking to be able to help communities with this hopefully in the future. And this is one that we think that is just a really, really cool resource and can be utilized by communities themselves for these types of planning sessions. Let's see, back to the PowerPoint. You see the PowerPoint now?
Yep.
Okay. So that's Miro. Also, Zoom has something called a whiteboard, and a lot of people don't really know what it is for, but it's also something very similar to where anybody on the Zoom should have access to the whiteboard, and it can be sort of a common space to share ideas. And so utilizing the whiteboard for that kind of visioning session too, it's like, well, everybody go to the whiteboard and write X, Y, and Z on there. Google Docs can be utilized the same way. The only tricky part with that is like, if you have a Google address or a Google account, people would have to set that up ahead of time if they don't. So that's just sort of some pre-planning items. All this to say also, your board's technology comfort level. And so you might have to go a little bit more analog where you're standing in front of like a Post-it chart or something, and you're writing things down, or you're filling out Post-its for them, or they send you sort of some stuff. It just it depends on your board's comfort level. But I think that Miro.com is going to be a really great resource for a lot of y'all if you're looking to try to do a virtual planning session with your board and kind of use one of the traditional facilitation techniques.
Elizabeth, is there a cost for Miro? Do you know?
Not there is when you get to a certain number of users, but like all of our communities from I can think of should qualify for the free cost to be able to utilize it as a planning tool.
Okay.
You have your good old SWOT analysis. We love it. We hate it. It is what it is. But it's sort of that these are the sort of the questions that this is great if you really don't know what questions to ask. They're kind of built in for you. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and sort of filtering those into, as you see, you kind of group. And so I'm like pointing at the screen like you can see me. Common things under each one and categorize them. And that sort of informs, things to work on, improve upon, things you're already doing well if you want to build onto them in the future. And in our community transformation strategies workbook, we have this lovely graphic. It also has additional questions that you can ask, guiding your SWOT analysis and or any other planning session you are wanting to achieve. Plug.
And I would say you can do this as micro or macro as you need to, I mean, you can do it for the whole district and say, hey, what are our strengths and weaknesses? And then you can get down in, nitty gritty and talk about the organization or a specific project or, and really help you think through any possible challenges or, things that may come up from it. I always call them landmines, want to avoid the landmines. Okay.
Exactly. And without further ado, we have our community transformation strategy workbook. And like I mentioned earlier, this can also be a really great planning tool. That's just the cover. You can find it on our website under publications. We also, Jessica has kindly added a purchase link if you want a physical copy for all of our publications on the website as well. And so that's now live. But kind of going to the community transformation strategies idea, this is direct pull from the strategies workbook, but as you can see, they're comprehensive, asset-based, visionary, concise, and measurable. When you're thinking about community transformation strategies, you don't have to use the Catalyst strategy that we created, or if you like the strategy and you don't like what it's called, you can change it. We helped Rome with that process where their board just was not responding to the word storytelling. And so Jessica word crafted a different title for them, and they're like, oh yeah, we love this. And so you don't have to be tied to this, but just the general ideas and sort of like framework provided are what are really important. And so quick reference. So when we talk about our Catalyst strategies, we as a team, you've heard this story before, so I won't go into it too much, but we essentially pinpointed some common strategies throughout the state via researching work plans. And these are the ones that we came up with that we've seen repeatedly or enough to where it's like, we think this is a trend, so we're going to include this in our Catalyst strategies in the workbook. Every Catalyst strategy has a spread. This is work planning gold. Not only does it help you with the transformation strategy process, but when we were talking earlier about, you giving homework to your board members, the whole book could be a little like crazy. Like Jessica said, you could pull out maybe 5 or 6 that you think really your community. So really understanding these are the ones that could fit. There's crossover in them. They're intended to work together. So you can even just even if you go through, we had Rome they kind of looked at it like independently, and they just went through and they're like, oh, well, we like these different goals under these. And so even if it didn't fit under the strategy they chose, they're like, but it still fits this activity. So we're going to put it under there. And this is something we want to concentrate on. And so just pulling some of these out, you can do a dot voting of like virtual dot voting of here are these different ones based on your review of them pre-meeting, vote for your top 3. And then the top 3 they get out of that dot voting then become your transformation strategies and kind of help you have that out of the way. Like, yay, transformation strategies. And then you can really focus on what those goals are underneath them. And then the great thing with that is we have some suggested activities and goals that tuck under each strategy. And like I said, they're fluid. So there could be one under the beautification and design that could realistically fit under activation and development. And if it's something that you want to focus on, that's great. But this is sort of project inspiration for y'all. So it's not just how do you do a transformation strategy. It's like, these are ideas of what you could work on as a community. So that's amazing, amazing. And also your partners, key descriptors, the summary, you can rehab that into your why of like, this is the summary of this, but why is that important to our community? And that helps you in your work plan. So it's just like, it's perfect. Not perfect, nothing's perfect, but it's wonderful. So don't forget about this resource. Again,
we have, like Elizabeth was saying, digital and print copies available.
Mm-hmm. And we also, if you need them, if you don't have the PDF capability, we have each of the spreads like as an individual document that we could send to you if you're like, I don't want to have to send this whole thing because I feel like they'll feel overwhelmed. We just kind of want that individual spread of these ones. We can send those to you for a planning purposes. This is just an example of dot voting and how simple it can be. You could literally have this in a Google Doc and have something similar. You could use Miro and move the Post-its around. But you could just list out here are the transformation strategies that we're looking at, vote, top 3, and then that kind of gives you the idea of the ones that you want to focus on.
And also, if you're doing stuff virtually, a lot of these Zoom and GoToMeetings and stuff have polls that you can do, and you can plug in some of those questions ahead of time. And then, again, you're getting that anonymous response, but, a way to just kind of like, help get some interaction and start some discussions.
And on that homework, it could just be a simple quiz that you set up for SurveyMonkey or a Google form or something like that. And so it's just like they have to, you give them information to digest, but then they have to do the quiz beforehand. And that quiz helps inform the trajectory of your meeting so that you have a little bit more defined marching order. So you don't have to spend as much time like on the screen, because again, this can get exhausting. So that's another sort of pre-homework idea of, do a very tailored survey to sort of like, these are the things that we want to have decided before we go into the meeting. So that the meeting, we can really conscious on like goals, so maybe you could do with the entire transformation strategy thing pre-meeting and then focus on goals during the meeting. So it's really what your priorities are for what you want to accomplish in the meeting. This is something else that's in our community transformation strategies guide. It's in our appendix. When we were making it, we're like, we think this is a good idea, but we're not 100%, it might get used, I don't know. But I know Statesboro found it very useful, and they actually asked us to create a blank document so they could kind of do like a little play of like how to match stuff up on their own, which is really cool. So I don't know how that ended up going, but that's something that you could reach out to them about. But this kind of figures like, okay, well, these are the things we want to accomplish. So it helps you decide like, oh, well, we're sort of in the line for this transformation strategy. So maybe that makes sense that this is one we're leaning towards, or we want to go to this transformation strategy. What are some of the activities that we could do to support that? And that kind of is what this document is intended for.
And I will say, if you go back to that, Elizabeth, that we had one of our communities, Statesboro, I believe, reach out to us and say, hey, do you have a blank version of this? Because we want to be able to do it ourselves. Yep, Amy just asked about that. And yeah, we have a blank version. So if you want a copy of that, just reach out to us and you guys can plug and play with your own stuff, and then use it with your board or yourselves to make it your own. And
then I would be remiss if I didn't just like mention this. for all of the stuff we're talking about today, community data and transformation, like community data needs to inform your decisions so you can have SMART goals, so strategic, measured, attainable, realistic, and time bound. So it's like, if you want to have, you know, the best offshore fishing operation in the state, but you're Macon, that's probably not a realistic goal. So make sure that your goals are realistic for your community. And so this is just understanding your community's economic performance. You can read the slide, but just kind of understanding that and making sure this information informs the board retreat and also the plan that is created from it. My favorite quote, "A vision without a plan is a hallucination." You've probably heard me say it a lot, but it's true. And so that's the entire purpose of this work planning process. The work plan specifically is it's that tool to help encourage, to figure it out, prioritize your goals, and then also like dig deep into the tasks so that they're more likely to get accomplished. Questions?
I see that we had a couple people ask, like, if we could do, you know, maybe a deeper dive into some of these tools and resources. And yeah, we could absolutely set something like that up where we, like, that's what we're doing. You know, we're not going through like kind of all of this, but we're just like, okay, this is how you do a poll. This is how you use this tool. This is how, yeah, we can absolutely work as a team to set something like that up. Because again, you know, unfortunately, in the world we're in right now, I think we're going to be using virtual stuff for quite some time. But I think also too is now that we have been able to get people used to this, it's something we should continue to use and utilize, right? You know, why just let it go away completely? It is, you know, is the ability to bring us all together, you know, without having to necessarily drive across the state or, you know, take all this time out of our day and our businesses. And we're working with people who have, you know, they have other things going on. They're board members, you know, they're volunteering their time and resources. So I think that's, you know.
And I will say Miro has an entire YouTube channel. I have probably alone watched about 8 hours of their videos on how to utilize their tools. But it's everything from like, here's a sample process to here's how this can work. And here's some of the tools that you might not realize. And so for any digital tools, like we're happy to do anything, any learning, you know, hands-on learning, but for especially Miro, their database is built out for learning tools. And so if that is a tool that you're interested in, I feel like it's kind of one of those horse's mouth situations where you probably like are best to go to their resources specifically. But not to say that we couldn't do something too, like this is how we found works best for us as well. But for some of the nitty gritty stuff, their resources are really great.
And I will say too, one of the things that we've learned kind of going through this facilitation process in a virtual world, one of the things that we found that is that if you're going to do it virtually for the board, it's best to have everybody virtual versus some virtual and some in person, because of the ability to engage and to use those polls and things like that. Whereas if some people are in a room together and some people are virtual, you kind of have to, you know, split the difference and do things a little bit differently. So we've found that it's one of those things that's better either to do it all in person, which right now is tough, or to have everybody participate virtually. And that way you can use some of these resources and tools and kind of have more control. And as far as like sound and communication and stuff like that, it works out a little bit better too. That's just, you know, one of the things that, you know, again, this is all a learning process for all of us, but, you know, you guys shouldn't have to figure it all out. We're, you know, if we're working through it and we've found successes or challenges, we, you know, we can share that with you and let you know. Anybody else have questions, any challenges that you've had that you need help with? You know, I don't want to keep anybody that, you know, has got other things that they need to jump off on or go to, but, you know, we're here to, if you need to think through some stuff, or if you just have a specific question about a certain element of it or something.
So I'm just trying to buzz through the questions really quick to see if there's anything we missed. Trudy, you said Bueller, so I feel like.
I think it's because when you said any questions.
Oh. I was like, did you ask the question and then we didn't get to it? Is there anybody in the chat that asked a question in the chat that we didn't answer? Just so that we make sure.
I think the Zoom whiteboard was the only thing people were like,
Okay.
"Hey, what is that? How do we use that? What do we do with that?"
There's a lot, again, a lot of videos on that specifically too. And that's kind of where I've learned to play with it. But it's a really neat, like I didn't know what it was for. And then I was like, oh, this is fabulous. So.
I don't even know where the Zoom whiteboard is. I'm like,
when you do share screen, there's a whiteboard option. So you click on that and then everybody, if you're in a Zoom and you do share screen, like everybody should be able to go to the whiteboard. Yeah. From my understanding.
oh
So
my goodness.
there's like a little toolbar.
Yeah, up here.
You can do draw, you can type stuff. Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there it is.
So you could draw a circle and you can say everybody type, your thoughts in this circle or like, stuff like that.
Very cool.
And then one person asked, can we get a blank? Okay, so that was the matrix. Gotcha.
Yeah, and we have that if anybody is interested in it. And if you I was gonna say, if you want to buy publications for your board and you're gonna buy more than one, just reach out to us. I'll give you a discount and we'll send you an invoice and do it that way, so you don't have to purchase them one at a time and stuff like that. Thank y'all. I mean, Elizabeth, Tara, and I will hang around if you have any questions. You want to talk to us one-on-one. But other than that, we appreciate y'all being here. Again, we're a resource for you. Let us know what we can do, how we can help. Our goal is to try and make your lives easier.
Yeah, not harder. None of this is intended to be harder. It's more successful.
Thank y'all for being with us. Kenda.